everybody. We are welcoming you here today to introduce a new element that we're adding to our library of story code videos and helps. And this is one of our favorite things that we like to do. If you ever find us out in the wild, out at conferences and things, you'll see us wearing an Ambush the Analyst badge. And if you see that, that is your opening to say, hey, I have a question. Could you work with me on my story for a minute? And we will. We'll spend a few minutes with you. We'll ask you some questions about your story, and hopefully we can give you a little bit of guidance on maybe some of the elements that you may be missing, or encourage you with some of the elements that you already have that are already incredibly strong. Well, in this segment, we are actually going to take this online now, today, and build a library of Ambush the Analyst questions.
So we're inviting you to submit your questions to us, and we'll answer them here on the show. You can put them in the comments below. You can contact us through the website. You can post them on our Facebook group. But we're gathering questions to answer for you guys. So today's question actually is the number one question we get repeatedly.
Yeah, frequently, this is a blind spot that we find with a lot of writers too.
And the question we get repeatedly is, do I really need a system character? So we're going to spend a couple of minutes explaining what a system character is, and then we're going to talk about if you need one or not.
Yeah. So let's just do a quick review of what it looks like on the structure, on the story cone. So we have the shape here of the story cone, and this encapsulates the world of the story. This is where our story takes place. Up here, we have the system. These are the rules for which this, the rules under which this story works. I'm trying to say that correctly. I'm just making sure I say it. So when you look at the story, every story has its own rules, its own world, what's permissible, what's not permissible. And so that is embodied by the system. And then, of course, we always have our lovely glitched primary norm breaker down here. That is, oh dear, breaking the rules of that system. And this, what we're looking at when we, one of the really awesome dynamics with the story cone is we get this axis of antagonism. Everybody on this line is in danger. They can be taken out, just like that's an arrow, just shooting right up through them, and they can be taken out. They can be hurt. They can be, my arm's going crooked, but I'll go straight. Woo, woo, okay. But everybody can be taken out on that line. And when you are pulled into the fray of a story, when you are a character that gets pulled in, we feel that they're on the line, literally.
And we also, typically call this the central conflict. And we know that there is not a story without central conflict running right through that middle of that story. And Amy, you have also drawn the audience arc above, and that's us. That's the readers, the audience of the story. And that conflict hits right into us. We're actually the ultimate target for that conflict.
100%.
So we've got this system, we've got these rules that rule the world of the story. We've got somebody breaking either intentionally or unintentionally those rules. But do we need somebody embodying that system? And it's a pretty resounding yes, except that you do sometimes have these survival stories where, typically called man against nature. Sometimes those are not embodied, and that's okay. But you'll often find in those stories, though, there's other people peopling that story, and there is still some conflict with some sort of human embodied person that's representing some sort of system in that primary norm breaker's life. A story can have multiple systems. Some of them can be benevolent, like maybe a parental system for a child. They're still hitting up against them, but it doesn't mean that they're evil and out to get them. and many systems are not. They're more antagonistic. to our primary norm breaker. Uh,
Yeah, well, so one of the strong examples that I like to explain is, that most people know, you bring in the story of Star Wars, New Hope. And we look at that original story that came out, and when we look at that, you can say, what would Star Wars be if not for Darth Vader? So we do ask, who is embodying that system? Who is enforcing those rules of that system? Now, we do hear that there's some emperor, but he's not on scene for number 4, for, New Hope. And it is 100% Darth Vader that's taking control. And we almost feel like he's more powerful than the Emperor, because he's like, he's going to reach out just with his thoughts and kill a captain, a commander.
yeah, we know where the real power lies.
We know where the real power lies. And so when he's enforcing those system rules, what would Star Wars be today if they had only had the Empire and no Darth Vader? That's the difference a system character makes.
Exactly. You completely rev up your story if you can embody that system in a person. So we'll give you one example from the analysis work that we've done. So we were working with a business who was releasing a business fable. It was a training company. They had designed this system to help business people be more successful. And they wanted to teach it through a fictional story, which they had written. But they also didn't have a system character. So they had a guy who was a very successful business guy, but his wife was divorcing him. He was very focused on all of the material trappings of the corporate world. And again, we just didn't really have anybody embodying that world. And so in the story, though, he had this coworker who was kind of reprehensible. I mean, he was definitely a ladder climber, but he wasn't really like against our primary norm breaker. So we suggested that they develop this coworker into the system character, make him be more aggressive and more fighting against this norm breaker for position. And also ultimately that he represented all of the empty material trappings of corporate success, that he came to realize that he wanted the relationship with his wife and family to be stronger more than he wanted these empty goals that he had been chasing all of his life. And it just made a whole difference for this story, and it made it a lot more, we amped up that central axis of antagonism, and it improved the story.
And that's what we're finding, that when you can actually identify that system character and your norm breakers going up against them, it makes a better story. And that's what it did for our clients that we've worked with. It's what's helped everybody that we discuss things with. And it's surprising how many of us want to write a story where we don't actually embody a system. So if you've got it, hey, congratulate yourself, pat yourself on the back. You did a good job. You found that element on your own, because there are geniuses out there. We just want to validate that genius, or help the rest of us just see the things we don't yet know. Okay.
Yeah, if you don't have it, you're not alone. Like everyone else has been struggling with the same thing. It's just changing the lens of how you're looking at story a little bit, and seeing those hidden kind of things that once we see them, we're like, oh yeah, of course that's there. I knew that all along. I didn't have the language to express it, and that's what the story code does. Is it gives us language and clarifies our vision of what's going on in the story.
Yes. Now, I do want to make sure that you realize that there is one little difference. A lot of the time we confuse our little try-fail cycle with system. Those hurdles that our norm breaker has to overcome, those growth opportunities, that is not your system character, okay? That's more stormtroopers.
It can be, but it's usually affiliated with the system, but it's often the henchman of the system character.
Yes. So make sure that is something you consider.
And that's a different function and a different question for another day. So we invite you to come and give us your questions. Try to stump us. You know, we would love to throw the hardest thing you can think of at us, and we'll see if the story code can answer it. And we are always testing the story code. We're always putting it under a microscope, trying to poke holes in it to see if these patterns really do hold up over time. And we are learning so much in that process. And we would love to invite you to be part of that process.
Yes. Until next time.